The tears are like brimming. They have not teetered over yet. Go back in. Nope, one's coming out on this side. Okay, the other one went back in. Stay silent. I couldn't think of anything to say that didn't have unbearable consequences. His mental health issues were a shock. He'd always seemed so bright and cheerful, I would never have guessed. But since he hadn't hurt himself since I moved in, maybe that was the reason. However, that meant that if I rejected him, he'd return to those old habits, or worse. I recalled my suicide attempt and my brother's devastated reaction. My scars were no longer visible due to some expensive treatments my brother insisted on. Only my family knew about that event. That familiar pain, hopelessness, and loneliness were unbearable, and Quinn had been teetering on that brink for so long. I couldn't toss him back into that infinite well of darkness. He was my best friend, but I wasn't in love with him. I'd made that crystal clear, repeatedly. Hadn't I? I had no idea. Of course you didn't. I've never told anyone that. You are the only person in the world who knows this about me. That's how important you are to me. There's a lot about my past I'd like you to know. I've made a lot of mistakes and bad decisions, but I know it won't change how you feel about me. You're such a kind and understanding person. That's why I love you so much. As friends. Right, best friends. Something was wrong here, and I was paralyzed with worry and uncertainty. I was afraid any move I made would hurt Quinn. He said the correct things whenever prompted, but his behaviors and attitudes spoke differently. What was going on in Quinn's mind? I'm so glad you like the sculpture. I'll paint it over the next few weeks. I want to take my time and do it right. Yeah, of course. It's great. I knew it was wrong, but I only saw one option. To do nothing. I had to protect Quinn from himself. The following morning, I went out for a walk after Quinn made breakfast for us and went to work. The previous night kept playing in my head, leaving me restless. I still hadn't found a solution when I heard a bell jingle and a voice call my name. Valkii, darling, how nice to see you. Out of habit, I'd walked into the city and near my job, although I'd intended to pass right by without going in. Sebastian must have noticed me from the window and rushed out to greet me. Hi, yeah, I'm just going now. I turned to leave, but of course he followed me, easily keeping stride with his long legs. It occurred to me, darling, if you're still job hunting, once the renovations are finished, I will have many open positions available. You could, of course, have your choice of them. I could make you a list. Although I didn't want to work with him, I was desperate, not just for a paycheck, but also to get out of the house and find some independence again. I was relying on Quinn too much and we needed more distance between us. If I could stand on my own 2 feet again, maybe that would make it clearer I wasn't romantically interested in him. I'll think about it. Text the positions to me. Wonderful, of course, darling. If you're interested, there are a lot of design elements about the new gym I'd love a woman's opinion on. I paused, a sudden and dangerous thought occurring to me. I had been avoiding Sebastian so intensely because of the things Quinn had suggested, things that I still had no proof did or did not happen. The idea he'd been inappropriate had occurred to me at the time, but I'd never thought he would violate me. Perhaps it was foolish, but my gut told me he wouldn't do something like that. Yeah, your gut's dumb as fuck then. At the time, I believed his choices were suspicious and the possibility something bad had happened was high, but that was only after Quinn convinced me of it. Was not being suspicious naive? Would I be putting myself in danger if... I glanced into the cafe window to see nothing had changed since I'd lost my job. If he was seriously planning a renovation, wouldn't deconstruction have already started? Maybe there were legal permits required or the work was scheduled for the future. Or maybe... I have a question. You may ask me anything, darling. You bought the cafe because of me. We both know that. I know what kind of person you are because I grew up around people like you. Rich, selfish people who will do whatever they want because they can. Darling, but that doesn't make you inherently evil. You're still pursuing me despite my rejections. Well, that's irritating. Since I was sick, you haven't done anything that would suggest you're a bad person. If you were like my family, well, you would have done something crazy by now. Although buying the cafe to make me jobless qualifies, but at least that insanity was physically harmless. I would never hurt you, darling. Perhaps my behavior was selfish, I admit. I didn't take you home because I wanted to be near you. I enjoyed taking care of you. I still want to take care of you now. I never thought that choice would make you so suspicious of me, and I am ashamed that I frightened you. I am extremely sorry. I couldn't help the soft smile because I saw the sincerity in his eyes. All my doubts faded. While I hated that he abused the power of his name and money like my family, at least he wasn't a bad person at heart. Thank you for the apology. Please tell me the truth. Did you really buy the cafe to turn it into a gym? Or is the gym some half-baked idea you pulled out of your ass? His surprised expression was almost comical, but it relaxed into a kind smile quickly. You are more insightful than I anticipated. I'm impressed. The gym idea was a spontaneous decision, in truth, but if it meant I could spend time with you, darling, I'd buy out this entire city and rebuild it into anything you wanted. That was exactly the type of response I expected. If in this position, my brother would respond similarly, although his version would say, lay waste to the entire city for me. At least Sebastian's was constructive instead of destructive. Although it might be unethical, I realized I could use his desire to my advantage. I thought so. I want you to keep the cafe as is and hire everyone back. I hate that my co-workers lost their jobs because of me, and I honestly enjoy this job despite the negatives. It's a nice place where a lot of college kids hang out and socialize, and it was affordable for everyone. I can consider your proposal, but how do I benefit, darling? I'll date you, with some caveats. He chuckled softly, but I saw the excitement he tried to restrain. Oh, what are these caveats? It will be a normal and healthy relationship. I'm not obligated to continue it if I'm unhappy, but I will give you a fair chance. We also can't let my family find out. I can explain that later. It's a long story. Not an issue. And you have to be kind and forgiving to Quinn. His head cocked to the side with confusion. I have no issue with that request, but it seems like an odd requirement to specify. May I ask why? He's going through some rough personal stuff, and I think he might struggle with the idea of us dating. I need to figure out how to tell him this. I don't think he's going to like it. Very well. This isn't exactly how I hoped our relationship would begin, but I accept your offer. Huh? The cafe is reopening. Yeah, isn't it great? I put on a fake, excited smile, already knowing that Quinn would be disappointed to learn the news and upset to learn who would be my boss. That's surprising, but is this a good idea? You're doing so much better in school now and things are a lot less stressful, right? Honestly, I'm bored out of my mind most days. I'd rather be at work than sitting around doing nothing. And, I think this job will pay better, so I don't have to work the extra shifts anymore. What are you doing? Mister. Sorry, my cat's... You can see my cat, kind of. Hello, baby. Oh, happy boy. Oh, that's great, yeah. Did Sebastian sell it back to the owner when he found out about his idiotic plan wasn't going to work? No, Sebastian still owns the cafe. What? You're going to work for that creep? It's just a job, calm down. Are you crazy? That man violated you, kidnapped you, don't you? Yes, I remember. No, you don't remember. That's exactly the problem. You were unconscious for 4 days. I know that. Do you? Do you have any idea what he could have done? What he might have done? You can't put yourself at risk like this being around him. What if it happens again, Valkii? What if something worse happens? This had gotten incredibly personal, and his panicked pleas stunned me. I took a step forward and reached out, taking his arm and squeezing it gently. Hey, take a breath. Everything is fine. It's fine now. Please don't take this job. Don't be around that creep. We don't need the money. Everything else has been great the last couple of months. We're doing so well together. Calm down. Listen to me. All of those suspicions about Sebastian are circumstantial. He very well may have just been a kind but misguided guy. I don't believe he did anything wrong, and we're treating him like a criminal for nothing. It's not worth the risk. That's my decision to make, not yours. The silence that fell was deafening and painful. Quinn's desperation made my conviction waver. Despite any problems with Quinn, I never once doubted that he meant anything other than the best for me. That's what made all of this so hard and uncomfortable. He was a great friend and I cared about him deeply. I told Sebastian I would give him a chance. What? You're going to date him? No. Quinn, breathe, please. No, Valkii, no. I won't let you do this. Call it off immediately. I clenched my fists at my side and tried my best to remain calm. I feared he was right. I worried giving Sebastian this chance was a huge mistake. I was also terrified of hurting Quinn and what he might do afterwards. Is he fucking with... No. But I had to do something. I had to create some distance between Quinn and I. Dating someone seemed like the only way to force him to face reality without punching him in the face with harsh rejection. Even if I tried something direct and harsh, there was no guarantee he'd accept it. As long as I was available, he would try to fill that role. He would still have hope that things would change. So I had to make myself unavailable. It was a shitty reason to date Sebastian, but he wouldn't care. I knew I was trading one devil for another, but at least Sebastian wouldn't self-harm or risk suicide. Yeah, he'd kidnap you instead. Sebastian had proven he could accept rejection in the end. Ending that relationship should be easy. No. I'm not going to do that. This is my choice to make. I've made it. His eyes were growing wet with tears. My hands were trembling. The only reason I was able to stand my ground was because I knew Quinn wouldn't lash out when I upset him. If I were being this stubborn in front of my mother, I would... Oh, no, shit. I would have been hit long before now. What are you doing? I would have been hit long before now and caved into her demands, but I thought things were going so well and... Can't see the screen. Oh! Okay. He's sat on me and he's drooled on my keyboard, but he's not on my desk anymore. My microphone's like way up here because he's there. I don't know if I missed anything. Tear fell down his cheek, then suddenly and without a word he sprinted out of the apartment and jumped as the door slammed. I'm not on the game. Why? Why trust him over me? I don't understand this at all. I was angry, frustrated and afraid all at once, nearly in a panic. The girl of my dreams was going to let this man abuse her, and she was completely clueless. She was too kind-hearted, too naive, too trusting. I loved those qualities in her, but they had become dangerous. I had to find a way to fix this before something horrible happened. But I didn't understand any of it. Why? Why entertain the idea of Sebastian's pushy advances? Things had been going so well between us. We were building something amazing together, a relationship built on a solid concrete foundation of friendship, growing our feelings slowly and steadily as we grew closer. It was beautiful, this flower of love we were blooming together. Why? Why salt the ground suddenly out of nowhere? Why? My mind kept searching for where I failed, some tiny reason that could be blown widely out of proportion. Did she not understand how important she was to me? Did she doubt my feelings or intentions? Everything had been wonderful recently. We cooked healthy meals together from scratch. Her little mistakes were so cute. I shopped with her health in mind. I paid for everything to show I could support her. We folded clothes together. I taught her about properly separating colours. She said I meant the world to her at that party. She told me I took great care of her after her abusive brother made her upset. Repeatedly, she told or shown me how important I was in her life. I even opened up about my past and my trauma a little bit. Didn't she understand how significant that was for me? And my statue of the two of us that I'd worked so hard on, it was almost finished. I showed her, it showed how much she meant to me, how important she was in my life. I thought she understood. When I took her to the hospital, she said then I was the only one she wanted. It was a horrific situation, but I was so happy she only trusted me to be the one to support her during that traumatic situation. She was so fragile and afraid. So I stood by her side and held her hand every moment of the invasive exam, hating Sebastian with each worried wrinkle on her beautiful face. It was obvious she loved me. She just wasn't ready to admit it to herself, and now Sebastian? That monster. I didn't do anything wrong. It must be Sebastian. What did he say? That was the only explanation that made any sense. Somehow Sebastian manipulated her, convinced her this was for the best, lied to her about something. I had to find a way to fix this mess. The bell to the cafe jingled as I stormed inside, ignoring the closed sign on the front door. The storefront was empty. Sebastian! I yelled at the top of my lungs, desperate to find him here because I had no idea where else to look. Only a moment passed before Sebastian walked out of the back room, a look of surprise on his face. What the hell, Quinn? Is the screaming really necessary? What did you do? Huh? What did you do? What did you say to her? Why in the hell would she ever date you? You're a monster that kidnapped her. She got a kit test done because of you. Do you have any idea? She what? His surprise caught me off guard. I'd forgotten Valkii didn't want anyone to know about the test. My hand slapped over my big mouth in horror at what I just blurted out. Because of me? What the fuck, Quinn? Why would she get a test because of me? It was too late to take it back. Because you could have... her. You kidnapped her and held her there. His fist slammed the counter so hard it cracked. He was horrified and outraged by my accusation. Where... why... you... I took a fearful step backwards as he stormed around the counter to approach me, his words laced with venom and his finger pointing at me. He towered above me, with his face red with rage. You planted that idea in her head, didn't you? You're the reason she avoided me so much after that day. How dare you accuse me of something so vile? I love that woman more than life itself. She was unconscious for 4 days. You must have drugged her. He laughed, then the sudden move swing catching me off guard. Even if I drugged her, that doesn't mean her. There are degrees of evil, Quinn, and I take significant offense that you would dare accuse me of such atrocious behavior. I would never hurt her like that. Everything I do is in her best interest. Such an act is selfish, cruel, and stupid. I would lose her forever, and I would deserve that misery. I will not lose her. I'd rather kill myself than be without her. So don't you fucking dare ever utter such filth about me again. His voice had shifted from outraged yelling to calm fury, which was even more terrifying, but this was more proof that he was a monster. I had to protect Valkii from him. She doesn't love you. She's not interested in you at all. She's doing this because... of me. Because she feels guilty for her co-workers losing their jobs, because she's bored and wanted the cafe back. Because she wants to work towards her goal of independence. It has nothing to do with you at all. You're just a means to an end. Give it up before you embarrass yourself. She'll never stop wondering what happened those nights. That suspicion will linger and fester forever. She'll never be able to trust you completely. You can't build a happy, healthy relationship like that. He was quiet for a moment, then a small smirk grew on his lips. My, the kitten has claws. What? All my research into you... Ugh. Fucking cat hair. All my research into you suggested that you were just a good kid who fell in bad situations. I thought you'd be a great friend to Valkii. Research? Someone kind and patient and understanding who would do the right thing in a bad situation. Perfect best friend on paper. Yet here you are, a manipulative little bitch in heat going after my soulmate. What the fuck are you talking about? Did you not get the news? Valkii already knows. My last name is Sebastian Dalla Rosa. Nice to meet you, Mr. Noah Quentin Deirdre. Again, I don't know how to say his last name. How? I froze. No one knew my real first name here. Barely anyone in this world knew that name. Sebastian should not have known that name. No one should. Kind of warm for long sleeves, isn't it? He reached down towards my sleeve and I yanked my arm away, holding it against my chest as if it was something fragile and precious. He leaned in closer, backing me against a wall, invading my personal space. I could smell a faint scent of lavender. Wasn't that Valky's favorite scent? I don't do that anymore. Oh, since when? It's none of your fucking business. Valkii is my business. You live with her, so that makes you my business. I know everything. Oh God, I feel itchy because of cat hair. I know everything there is to know about you. I know about your stepfather, the accusations that he abused. Stop. You. That you murdered him, about your ex-boyfriend and your previous employment. I know everything. Stop. My world was unraveling and I was powerless to stop it. Tears filled my eyes as terror took a hold of my heart. How? How could he know all of my secrets, all of my dead and buried past? I hadn't told Valkii any of this yet. What if he told her? What if she misunderstood? What if he manipulated the details to make me look like the villain? She is my soulmate. Mine. She will never be with you. You're not worthy. In fact, you should be on your knees thanking me for letting you exist in her presence. You're disgusting. She deserves better friends than the likes of you. You would prefer she didn't have any friends, actually. I was frozen like a deer in headlights. I wanted to retort. Angry words were screaming in my mind, but I was powerless and he wouldn't stop talking. Your manipulations won't work on me, honey. You're an amateur. Give it up. Give her up. Nothing will ever come between her and I. That includes you. I wouldn't let it happen. Then suddenly he stepped away, a smug smirk on his lips. Sadly, as much as I'd prefer to do away with you immediately, I promised my darling I would be kind to you, and I am a man of my word. This is me being kind. This is your only warning. Most people who get in my way don't receive such generosity. You're crazy. Crazy in love and not a man to be trifled with, so stay the fuck out of my way or I will take you out of the picture. Leave, and don't even think about telling Valkii about this conversation. I will end you if you even hint at it. I turned and ran out of the cafe, the shop bell ringing behind me. It's still a bigger yandere than a Quinn is in this, apparently. When I returned home, Valkii was missing. Normally that would distress me, but at that moment I was thankful to be alone. Tears streamed down my blotchy cheeks and I was trembling with fear. Sebastian was going to ruin everything, all my years of building something special with Valkii, fostering this perfect relationship, building trust and intimacy slowly over time for her comfort. All of it was being stolen from me, and there was nothing I could do to stop him. We loved each other so much. Why couldn't she see that? Why was she afraid of our love? Was she afraid of being hurt? Did she not understand her feelings? How could I make her see? Sebastian Dalla Rosa. That last name echoed in my head over and over since I'd run away from home. Dalla Rosa. The multi-billion-dollar technology corporation. He was a part of that family. It was always obvious he was wealthy. He wore nice clothes, his hair was always perfectly trimmed, and his car was expensive. But I had no idea he was filthy fucking rich. He was everything I was not, and it was eating me alive. Oof. He's so gonna want to go out now. Sebastian was strong and manly, with thick muscles on his lean frame. He exuded confidence without arrogance. He was cultured, polite, educated, well-spoken, handsome, charming. Everything I wasn't. My entire life I'd been mocked and teased for not being manly. I'd struggled to accept myself. I thought I had. When Valkii accepted me, I'd finally found peace with myself, until now. Until she chose a real man over me. Hands shaking, I found myself in our kitchen. I was running on instinct now. I dug through the cabinet under the sink and dropped to sit on my ass. I found my little black pouch where I kept my old equipment well hidden under towels and began cleaning supplies. Behind cleaning supplies. I thought about throwing it away. I told myself one day I would. But if I were honest with myself, I knew one day I would need it again. The consequence of love is inevitable pain. The tiny, precious little pouch contained everything I needed. It was discreet and easy to ignore. I unzipped the pouch and dumped the contents onto the cheap tile floor. Disinfectant wipes in tiny paper wrappers, a set of razor blade refills, tiny little bandages, gauze, and small disposable paper bags to hide all of the evidence when I was done. I stopped for her. The thought was painful and intrusive, but it also accompanied a foolish idea as I heard the front door to the apartment open. I hadn't considered her returning home so soon when I'd ran here. Normally, I'd rush to hide the evidence or run into her room without a moment's hesitation. Instead, I yanked up my sleeve, grabbed a loose blade, and cut my arm too deep in my haste, neglecting the disinfectant. "Quinn? Are you here?" She was heading towards my bedroom. When she passed the kitchen entryway, her eyes grew wide with horror. "Oh my God, Quinn! What?" As I began to grow dizzy, I prayed this horrible idea would work. "Quinn." "Darling, it's so nice to see. I can't date you anymore. I'm sorry." "What? I thought we had an agreement." "Quinn tried to kill himself last night. I found him in the kitchen. Blood. God, there was so much blood everywhere. It was terrifying." "That must have been difficult for you." "He said he did it because I didn't love him. He didn't want to live in a world where he wouldn't be loved. I panicked. I tried to call an ambulance, but he knocked my phone out of my hand and it broke. I couldn't make a call, and when I begged for his phone, he refused. He begged me to let him die." "How awful." I panicked. I didn't know what else to do, so I told him I loved him. That was the only way I could get him to give me his phone. I had to beg him to let me save his life. "But you don't love him, darling." "What was I supposed to do? Let him die?" I glared at his silence. He sighed, folding his arms across his chest. "I suppose not, but that doesn't mean you have to carry on with this ruse. He doesn't need a fake relationship with someone who doesn't love him. He needs a straitjacket. Sebastian, don't be crass. I know he needs a doctor, but he refuses. He doesn't want to be locked away in a padded cell for the rest of his life. He's not required to cooperate in circumstances like this. I can stop. I'm not having him involuntarily committed. I won't do something to him that I wouldn't want for myself. I understand his feelings a little too well. He's not crazy, and he doesn't deserve that. He's a good person who is hurting. He's always been good to me, and I won't be cruel in return." "So you're going to pretend to be his girlfriend? To what end, exactly? What's your plan here?" "I don't know, Sebastian. I can't think that far ahead. All I can think about right now is keeping my best friend alive." "And what of our agreement?" I paused, glaring hatefully at him. "Are you refusing to hire me if I don't date you? I could sue you for that kind of bullshit." "Do you think you would win that lawsuit, darling?" I felt my blood boiling with rage. Alone, I knew I couldn't. If I got my family involved, perhaps, but that would come with its own unique nightmare. Trying something that foolish would end with people dead. If I remember correctly, I specifically said our relationship would be a normal one and that I was not required to continue if I were unhappy. This does not make me happy with you, Sebastian. His smirk remained, amused by my comment. Clever girl, you are correct. But this is the lose-lose situation for me, darling. You're not offering me a deal where I benefit. For fuck's sake, Sebastian, this is not a negotiation. Everything is a negotiation, my dearest. If his current state is sincere, I doubt Quinn is in any condition to continue supporting you both financially. Even if I did offer you your old job back, that wouldn't be enough to pay all of the bills, would it? I felt dread slowly consume me. I hadn't considered this. Quinn was still in the hospital. He was still an hourly employee. After his raise, he made enough to make ends meet. Even if he was capable of working, it wouldn't be full-time hours due to the hospital visits, therapists, medications, and so on. He could also be incurring a significant amount of medical debt. What are you proposing? He smiled softly at me as he approached and reached up towards my face. His fingers gently pushed loose strands of hair out of my eyes and behind my ear. All I've ever wanted is you, darling. I don't care about the circumstances or hoops I have to jump through to make that happen. If you want to continue this fast to comfort your friend in need, that's fine, as long as you are mine. You can't be serious. Of course I am. And in exchange, you can have any position you want at this cafe at a ridiculously generous rate and extremely flexible hours. My job was now dating Sebastian. I should have expected as much. Are you hungry? I'll make some food. Oh, we can... I did some grocery shopping and bought some canned soup. I'll just heat it in the microwave. No need to worry. Take a break. Relax. Oh, okay. Valkii left me in the living room. I was already losing her. I had to let my cat out. Oh, I should have gotten something to clean up the space. Like, there's drool on the space bar. I didn't think this far ahead. I didn't realize I would suddenly be... I don't remember if I read this. I would suddenly be depending on her for money and care. Everything was backwards, and I felt her slipping away. Okay, sorry. I just need to pause. She said we were a couple now, but she still took the job working for Sebastian, although she swore they weren't together romantically. I wanted to believe her. I chose to believe her. I knew in my heart that she loved me and only me, even if she didn't understand that yet. My wound was itchy, but my arm was tightly and thickly wrapped in a sling. I'd damaged some nerves. Thankfully, I'd at least been smart enough to cut my non-dominant arm. My little statue of the two of us was sitting on the coffee table. I'd only begun painting the colours before everything happened. It was easier to work in the living room because there was direct sunlight. I walked over and picked it up, examining the details of my incomplete paint job. Do you want chicken noodle or... I was so lost in my feelings and thoughts that her voice surprised me. I was tired from a sleepless night in the hospital and constantly talking to the doctors about my mental state. I was thirsty and hungry. Plus, the pain medication hadn't fully worn off yet. Between all of that, I was a physical and emotional wreck. When Valkii startled me, my grip on the statue loosened. It fell from my hand, crashing on the corner of the coffee table and broke into multiple pieces. No! I failed to catch it. I fell to my knees, distraught, frantically grabbing up the pieces in a panic. Both of Valkyie's wings had broken off. 2 of the flower petals in my lap had snapped. Part of my face was chipped off. There were 2 large cracks across the characters' bodies. I began sobbing. I heard Valkii say something, but I couldn't understand her words over my tears. She rushed to my side and pulled me into a tight hug. Was it impossible to put myself back together? Was I too broken to be loved? I desperately clung to her. If I held on tightly enough, maybe she wouldn't abandon me. So hot. I woke up sweaty, blinded by the morning sunlight of my wide-open window. Quinn's growing mental health issues were triggering my claustrophobia frequently. My room was too small for 2 people. I wiped the moisture from my brow and pulled free of the small, clingy man laying in my bed beside me. I sighed, rolling onto my side and brushing loose strands of his blue and red hair out of his face. The roots were beginning to fade, showing little peaks of blonde hidden among the bright colour. He felt my motion, and his long eyelashes fluttered open. He yawned, then smiled at me. Morning. Good morning. I thought you slept in your room last night. I missed you too much. I smiled. Quinn was such a sweet guy. I felt guilty at quiet moments like these when he looked at me with complete adoration. Everything about my life would be so much easier if I loved him. I wished that I did. He deserved real happiness. Quinn idly scratched at his bandaged wrist as he stretched, arcing his back like a lazy cat. I glanced at the clock, noting it was well past 10 in the morning. Quinn was on disability leave for work at the insistence of his psychologist. Sebastian didn't care what time I came into work, as long as I did, eventually. How's the wrist? Itchy, but it doesn't hurt anymore. Well, don't scratch it. They said, thanks, Mum, but I remember. Quinn stuck his tongue out at me playfully. I chuckled softly. He smiled, reached forward, and cupped my cheek gently. I love you so much, Valkii. I love you too. It wasn't true, but I played along. Quinn's delusional state had grown significantly. I encouraged him to see the psychologist more, but he only went as often as was minimally required by the disability provider, which was only twice a month. His doctor recommended twice a week minimum. Progress was painfully slow, sometimes non-existent, and sometimes even backwards. I tried multiple times to clarify, then downplay and minimize our relationship, but every time I did, the consequences were painful. It didn't take long for me to give up completely. A knock at the front door diverted our attention. I stood, grabbing a robe from my closet and tugging it on. Quinn followed me out, attached like a puppy at my heel. Pancakes or waffles? Pancakes. Waffles take too long. I need to head to work. Quinn frowned but nodded. He didn't like me working, but his disability pay was only a percentage of his normal pay. We needed the additional income to make ends meet. At first, he insisted on continuing our original arrangement and tried to go back to work, but when he had a panic attack at his job and terrified some clients, his supervisor forced him to take the leave. I walked to the door as Quinn disappeared into the kitchen. A small package sat on the ground. I picked it up and opened it as I walked into the living room. Inside the box was a piece of paper along with a dark purple dress and matching shoes. The paper only had one word written on it in familiar handwriting. Tonight. Did you order something? He stepped into the kitchen, awkwardly carrying a bowl of pancake batter he was stirring. His eyes fell on the silky, smooth cloth and his hand grew still. An uncomfortable moment of silence passed. Is that from Sebastian? Yes. Oh, how nice of him. You could wear that on our first real date. Yeah, good idea. Quinn beamed a bright smile and returned to the kitchen, whipping the batter as he walked. I sighed as I looked back down at the box. I'd been putting off that first date request for weeks, making excuses that Quinn needed to heal, focus on his therapy, and I needed to work. I wasn't going to be able to keep doing that forever. I was also going to have to tell Sebastian, and that was not a conversation I was looking forward to. I glanced over to the living room table where Quinn's statue sat. It had been pieced back together, but the cracks were still painfully visible. Quinn insisted he would find a way to fix it and make it perfect again. I dropped the box on the table and went into the kitchen. Quinn was already pouring the batter into a hot pan. Is Julian starting back at the cafe soon? You mentioned he got offered his job back too. Rehiring everyone was a condition of my agreement with Sebastian. Yeah, I think he starts today, actually. Today? Oh. Oh? His tone of voice was suspicious. Quinn glanced over his shoulder nervously. I hope he won't make you uncomfortable. He was always pursuing you, now that we're together. Julian knows I'm not interested, Quinn. Nothing has changed. I know, of course, I know. It's just, you never really showed any interest in Sebastian before either, but he kept pressuring you. His jealousy was direct and intense, and while I was growing frustrated with it, I was also saddened. Every option I had seemed wrong, and I didn't know how to handle this. Where did that confident, no-nonsense, sassy Quinn go? Was it always a mask he wore? Was this the real him? You don't need to worry about that. Of course not. I just want things to go back to normal, like they were before, so you could focus on school. Well, if you followed the psychologist's advice, then maybe you could return to work sooner. Although I had no idea why, my bitter words cut deep. The frying pan slipped from his hand, teetering over the edge. Instinctively, he reacted by grabbing it, burning his hand, which caused him to yelp. The pan and half-cooked batter clattered to the ground, making a mess. I rushed over to help him, but he yelled at me and shoved me away. I won't do it. It's fine. I'm fine. I'll clean it up. Won't do what? Shaking, he moved to the sink and ran water over the burn, hissing at the pain. Won't do what, Quinn? I don't like the psychologist. I'll look for a different one, okay? Why don't you like the psychologist? He was quiet for too long of a time, his eyes looking everywhere but at me. I just don't. He doesn't understand me. I'm not like everyone else, and our relationship isn't like everyone else's either. We're both special. He doesn't understand. I'll find someone else, okay? I promise. Quinn, you're not telling me something. I don't like that. Fear flickered in his eyes briefly. The guy's an idiot. He doesn't understand that we belong together. He thinks it would be better if... If what? If we were apart. It doesn't matter because I'm not doing it. He's a moron. He doesn't understand how much I love you, how important we are to each other. His growing panic frightened me, so I nodded quickly and smiled. Of course, I'm sure the next doctor will be better. Placated, Quinn nodded, turning off the water and examining the burned skin on his palm. I sighed and dug out the first aid kit. I'd burned myself enough times in my failed cooking attempts that we were well prepared for burns. I pulled out the necessary items and treated his hand. He silently allowed me, his eyes watching my face the entire time. All right, that should be good. I need to head to work. But the food... I'll eat something at work, don't worry. Take care of that hand. Saddened, Quinn nodded. I felt his eyes on me as I walked out. Did you like the dress, darling? Sebastian was waiting for me when I arrived late at work, an excited smile on his face. I sighed as I walked into the back, him following on my heels, just like Quinn often did. The clinginess of these two men was starting to grate on my nerves. You can't send me presents at home. Quinn saw the outfit and thinks I'm going to wear it for him now on a date. Sebastian scowled, clearly displeased by the idea. He then realized I hadn't brought the gown with me, despite our plans to go out after work. Where is the dress? I left it at home. It would be too suspicious if I brought it, and Quinn isn't holding together very well. That scowl shifted into anger for a brief moment, but then quickly faded with an amused smile. Very well. I'll simply take you shopping after work and buy you another dress. I can't, Sebastian. I can't keep playing this game and lying to him. I feel like I'm cheating on him. He trusts and loves me so much, but I'm just lying to his face to keep him alive. If he finds out I'm dating you, I'm terrified of what might happen. We had an agreement. You know that. Just give me some time. Quinn needs to find a new psychologist. I thought he already had one. He refuses to see that one anymore. Apparently he suggested Quinn and I not date or something. Quinn wouldn't tell me all the details. Darling, if the doctor told him you two shouldn't be together, then maybe ending this farce is the best thing for him. I don't think so. The end of the relationship needs to be controlled. He needs to have someone to talk to and work through it when it happens. So give me some time, please, once he has a new psychologist. And what if he doesn't like that one either? I don't think any good psychologist is going to tell him what he wants to hear, especially if they knew the entire relationship was a lie. I sighed, feeling defeated. Sebastian was right. Quinn wouldn't like the next one either, or the one after that, or the one after that, but I was too scared from his last suicide attempt to risk any action. I didn't love him romantically, but he was still my best friend. I cared about him and I wanted to protect him. I don't know, Sebastian. Just give me some time. He was quiet for a moment, his face expressionless. It gave me a chill. Of course, darling. I would wait forever for you if necessary. The next day, I sat in the living room working on repairing the cracks in my statue. It was even more difficult now with the wrapped burn on my dominant hand. Valkii had classes today, so I was calm and relaxed. When she was at the cafe, I was a ball of nerves, worried about what Sebastian or Julian might say or do. The two of them could manipulate her so easily. I hated every moment she spent there. Things were so much better since my suicide attempt. Although I hadn't intended to kill myself, the wounds I'd made on my wrists had been deep enough to kill me if I hadn't been found immediately. My hand would never be the same because of the nerve damage, but it was a small price to pay for the love of my life. Although it was a terrible and traumatic situation, the fear I'd seen in her eyes as I lay there bleeding out made me so happy. It was all the proof I needed that she loved me so deeply, even if she couldn't admit it. But now we were together, and that was the only thing that mattered. Valkii was a good person. She'd never betray or hurt me, but I didn't trust Sebastian or Julian around her. Who knows what they might try or what kinds of lies they might tell. It gave me nightmares. Things were tense because she worried about my mental health, but we were happy. She took such amazing care of me, and I felt so lucky to have her. I felt guilty about the event, but I reminded myself it was for the best. If I hadn't done that, we wouldn't be together. She wouldn't have realized how important I was to her. She needed that small push to face her fears about love. I had a great plan that I was desperately working towards. I was repairing all the cracks in the statue carefully, but it was slow going because of my injuries. I had broken off the poppy flower sitting in my character's lap and had replaced it with a small clay pillow I made. Once the repairs were finished and the statue fully painted, I would buy her an engagement ring. I would lay it on the statue's new pillow and ask her to marry me. I was excited to see the surprised look on her face. I knew she might waver and I needed some time to think about it, so I was preparing myself for that. There were so many fears and feelings for her to work through before she would be ready, the biggest one being her family. Getting them to accept me could be a challenge. But she would warm up to the idea. She would say yes sooner or later, and the ring would be on that little pillow waiting for her to accept it. Love conquered everything. A knock on the door caused me to jump with a surprise, smearing some of the repair glue. I grumbled and wiped it off quickly before heading towards the door and opening it. I assumed it would be another package from Sebastian, another attempt to bribe her with his dangerous love bombing. Instead, Sebastian himself stood in the door. He barged in, pushing me aside and slamming the door shut behind himself. I warned you to stay the fuck out of the way. I told you that was your only warning. Did you think I was bluffing? Get out before I call the cops. He smirked, and his eyes briefly shifted over my shoulder. He pushed me aside and walked over to pick up the statue from the table, examining it closely. You made this? Valkii mentioned it once. I'm impressed. It's lovely. Then, without hesitation, he dropped it. The pieces, which had been mended, broke again, along with some new ones cracking off. I yelled in a panic and ran to collect them before he did something cruel, like crush them beneath his shoe. He laughed at my reaction. Then before I could reach the shattered pieces, he suddenly grabbed my neck and slammed me against the wall, knocking the air out of my lungs. I was nice, as promised. I gave you a chance to survive and move on with your life. But no, you had to go and double down on the games. You don't seriously think she loves you, do you? His eyes skimmed my face, looking for the answer as I gasped for air. You do. How pathetic. I couldn't respond because I was coughing. His tight grip on my throat limited that recovery. I told you, she's my soulmate. She will never love anyone other than me. In every reincarnation, in every world, in every reality, she and I are meant to be together. Someone as pathetic as you can't possibly break us apart. And yet she's with me. He snorted and his grip tightened further around my throat, silencing me completely. Not because she loves you. She's pretending because she pities you, because she's a good person and doesn't want her friend to kill himself. Her kind heart is one of the things I love about her, but I know you. You and I aren't all that different. We'll both do anything to get what we want. Well, I'll do anything. You'll do almost anything, and that is what makes you unworthy of her heart. His grip grew terrifyingly tight, cutting off what little air I had completely. I clawed at his arm as he pulled me away from the wall, then slammed me back into it. My head hit the wall, disorienting me. Then suddenly I was dropped. I fell to the floor in a heap, gasping for breath. No, I have to be smart about this. I know exactly what to do. What the hell? When I returned home from classes that evening, I wasn't allowed into my apartment. The police and an ambulance were there, surrounding the building. Miss, you can't go. But I live here. A cop stopped me from entering the building. What apartment? I told him my number and he shook his head. Sorry, miss, I can't let you inside. Your apartment is a crime scene. The police will want you to answer some questions. Come with me. The officer gestured away from the building, but my eyes were locked on the gurney as it carried a body covered in a white sheet out of the building and into the waiting ambulance. My heart sank. When I left the police station hours later, I didn't know what to do. It was late and I still wasn't allowed into my apartment. I called Sebastian. He picked me up and took me back to his apartment. I'm so sorry, darling. It's all over the news. Yeah. I was still in shock. I was holding a folded piece of paper the police had given to me, too terrified to read it. Sebastian brought me a warm cup of cocoa and sat beside me on the couch, eyeing the paper. Did you read it yet? No, I can't. Would you like me to read it for you? I hesitated, but then nodded. I passed the paper over to Sebastian. He sat his drink down, accepted it, unfolded it, and then began reading. Dear Valkii, this is not your fault, so please don't feel guilty. I love you and I want you to be happy. I knew it wasn't real from the very beginning. I was just too scared to accept it. But I thank you for being such a great friend and to go to such incredible lengths for me. The facts are that I have lived a rough life, and I now realize that time isn't making it better. I am haunted by my past and possess a hopeless future. I clung to a fantasy, and that wasn't fair to either of us. I pray you can find the happiness I never could, and I wish you the best of luck. Love, Quinn. Sebastian finished reading and refolded the paper. I stared at it in confusion. That's it. Were you expecting more? I don't know what I was expecting. That doesn't sound like Quinn. Oh? Well, we have no idea what state of mind he was in when he wrote this. He may have been under the influence of something. He said, pray. He prayed I could find happiness. Quinn was an atheist. Some say they find God in their final moments. I frowned, taking the letter from him and opening it. I read through the words again, but they matched what Sebastian had read. The handwriting was Quinn's, albeit a bit sloppy. Maybe he had been using something. It wouldn't be unusual if it were true. Something just didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I hope you don't blame yourself, darling. No, I think I did everything I could. He seemed okay when I left this morning. He was talking about our first official date. A date that would have been a lie. It seems he knew that from the start. I sighed and sat the paper down, confused by everything that happened. I resigned myself to the fact I didn't know Quinn as well as I thought I did. I already missed him, but I hoped he had finally found peace. Fuck you, Sebastian. Okay, we're just gonna go because this one went on for really long and I'm definitely gonna have to split it up. 2 hours? A what if that lasted 2 hours? And that was full of misery. The next one better have a good ending.